My name is Christina Whitman, and I was 42 years old when I realized that loving someone doesn't guarantee they'll ever love you back, especially when that someone is a child who decided long before you ever met them that you would always be the enemy. When I married Michael Whitman, I wasn't naive. I knew I wasn't stepping into a fairy tale. Michael came with history scars and 3 children from his first marriage, Ryan, Emily, and Sarah. Their biological mother had struggled for years before she passed away, leaving behind a complicated legacy of love, chaos, and unresolved grief. I understood that grief doesn't disappear just because someone new enters the picture. I never expected to replace their mother. I never wanted to. What I did hope for foolishly in hindsight was mutual respect. Ryan and Emily were cautious at first, but open. They watched me, tested me, let me earn my place slowly. I helped with homework, showed up to school events, learned their routines. I didn't push. I didn't demand affection. Over time, something genuine formed between us. Quiet trust, shared laughter, a sense of safety. Sarah decided she hated me before I ever unpacked my suitcase. She was 13 when I first met her, an age where grief hardens into armor and resentment sharpens into a weapon. From the beginning, everything about me irritated her. If I smiled, she rolled her eyes. If I stayed silent, she accused me of being cold. There was no winning. I tried kindness. She mocked it. I tried distance. She accused me of neglect. And when I tried to simply exist in her presence, she made sure I knew I didn't belong. Michael tried to intervene. He told her I wasn't there to erase her mother, that loving me didn't mean betraying anyone. Sarah didn't listen. In her world, I wasn't just a stepmother, I was a symbol of everything she'd lost. Her favorite line became, "My real mom would have done better." Every time she said it, it landed exactly where she intended. I kept telling myself it would get better. That time would soften her. That grief would loosen its grip. I didn't realize then that grief doesn't always fade. Sometimes it calcifies, turning into something sharp enough to cut everyone nearby. And that was only the beginning. I thought I understood grief. I had lost my own father years earlier, and I knew how it lingered, how it showed up unexpectedly in quiet rooms, how it twisted ordinary days into something heavier. But what Sarah carried wasn't just grief. It was grief sharpened into blame, aimed squarely at me. After her mother died, whatever thin thread of tolerance Sarah had for my existence snapped completely. Before that, she'd ignored me or insulted me in passing. Afterwards, she hunted for ways to hurt me. If I laughed with Ryan and Emily, she accused me of turning them against her mother's memory. If I cooked dinner, she'd push the plate away and say, "My mom didn't make food that tasted like this." If I spoke, she interrupted. If I stayed quiet, she announced to the room that I was fake and trying too hard. Michael tried everything: therapy, family counseling, one-on-one conversations. He defended me when Sarah crossed lines, but even that seemed to fuel her anger more. In her mind, every word he spoke in my defense was proof that I was stealing something that belonged to her. The house became a minefield. I remember one evening so clearly it still tightens my chest. We were all at the dinner table, nothing special, just a regular night. Ryan was talking about a project he'd done at school. Emily was half listening, scrolling on her phone. I asked Sarah gently, "How was your day?" She looked straight at me, eyes cold, and said, "Why do you care? My real mom wouldn't pretend." The room went dead silent. Michael shot her a warning look. Emily froze. Ryan stared down at his plate. And me, I felt like I'd been slapped in front of everyone and told not to react. So I didn't. I nodded, swallowed whatever response was clawing its way up my throat, and let the conversation die. That became my pattern. Absorb. Endure. Stay calm. I told myself I was being the adult, the bigger person. What I didn't realize was how much that silence cost me. Over time, I started pulling back, not out of spite, but survival. I stopped initiating conversations with Sarah. I stopped trying to bond. I focused on keeping peace instead of building connection. But distance didn't soften her. It convinced her I never cared in the first place. She started treating me like furniture, walking past me without acknowledgement, talking about me instead of to me. And when she did address me, it was always to remind me of one thing: "You're not my mom." As if I'd ever claimed to be. Ryan and Emily noticed. They were old enough to see that what Sarah was doing wasn't normal sibling tension. They started spending more time in their rooms, more time at friends' houses, and eventually more time with me, because my presence apparently made the house calmer. That only made Sarah angrier. She accused them of choosing sides, of betraying their mother, of replacing her memory with me. I watched the resentment poison not just her relationship with me, but with her own siblings. It was heartbreaking, and it was exhausting. The breaking point came the night Sarah told Michael she would run away if he married me. I wasn't even supposed to hear it. I was upstairs folding laundry when her voice rose sharp, shaking with fury. If you marry her, I'm gone. I won't live here. I won't come back. I stood there holding one of Michael's shirts, feeling something in me go completely still. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just teenage anger. This was control and fear and grief that had curdled into something dangerous. Michael was torn apart by it. He loved his daughter. He loved me. And Sarah knew exactly how to put him in an impossible position. So we did what desperate people do. We paused our lives. We postponed the wedding, told ourselves it was temporary, that Sarah just needed more time, that love and patience would fix everything. But deep down, something in me already knew the truth. This wasn't going to get better. It was only going to get louder. Putting your life on hold sounds reasonable until you realize time doesn't stop moving just because you're afraid of upsetting someone. After Sarah threatened to run away if Michael married me, everything went into limbo. No dates, no planning, no conversations about the future unless we whispered them late at night like they were something shameful. Outwardly, we pretended we were fine. Privately, we were slowly suffocating. Michael tried to keep things normal for Sarah. He took her out alone, listened. When she vented, reassured her that loving me didn't mean loving her mother any less. Sarah listened just long enough to gather ammunition. Then she used it. Anytime marriage came up, even indirectly, she erupted, slamming doors, accusing Michael of betrayal, telling him he was choosing a stranger over his own daughter. And every single time, she made sure I knew I was the reason everything hurt. Ryan and Emily saw it all. They were teenagers by then, old enough to recognize manipulation when they saw it. They stopped engaging with Sarah's outbursts, stopped defending themselves. Eventually, they stopped spending time at home altogether. Instead, they came to me. They'd sit on my couch after school shoes, kicked off tension melting from their shoulders like they'd stepped out of a storm. We'd watch movies, order cheap takeout, talk about school and friends and life. It wasn't forced. It wasn't dramatic. It was just peaceful. And Sarah hated that. She accused them of siding with me, of disrespecting their mother's memory, of abandoning her. The irony was cruel. She was pushing everyone away and blaming them for leaving. Michael noticed it too. He started spending nights on the couch, staring at the ceiling long after everyone else had gone to bed. One night, he finally said what we'd both been thinking. We can't live like this forever. I didn't respond right away. I was afraid that agreeing out loud would make me the villain Sarah already believed I was. But Michael wasn't wrong. Our lives had shrunk to the size of Sarah's anger. Every decision, every plan, every hope was filtered through whether or not she'd explode. Ryan and Emily, of all people, were the ones who pushed us forward. Just get married already, Emily said one night, rolling her eyes like this was the most obvious solution in the world. You're miserable because you're scared of her reaction. Ryan nodded. She's never going to be okay with it. Waiting isn't changing anything. Hearing that from them felt like permission, and guilt, and relief all at once. Michael and I talked for hours. About love, about responsibility, about whether it was selfish to choose happiness when it hurt someone else. In the end, we faced the truth we'd been avoiding. Sarah wasn't reacting to our choices. She was trying to control them. So we made a decision. We were going to get married. No big announcement, no engagement party, just a quiet plan. We told the kids first. Ryan and Emily hugged me so tightly it nearly knocked the breath out of me. They were genuinely happy for us, and that alone felt like a small miracle. Telling Sarah was catastrophic. She screamed, she cried, she accused. She threw words like weapons, betrayal, replacement, disrespect. She told Michael he was erasing her mother. She told me I was a parasite living off someone else's family. And when that wasn't enough, she went after her siblings. I'll never forget the sound of glass shattering upstairs. Michael and I ran toward it, hearts pounding, and found Sarah in Ryan's room. Posters ripped from the walls. His gaming console, overturned picture frames smashed on the floor. One of them held a photo from a camping trip I'd taken with Ryan and Emily. It lay cracked, our faces split by jagged lines. Ryan came home later and stood in the doorway silent. He didn't yell, he didn't cry. He just looked at the destruction and said quietly, "I'm done." That night, Ryan and Emily asked to move in with me full time. Michael was devastated, but he understood. And in that moment, the family Sarah was so afraid of losing finally slipped completely out of her grasp. When Ryan and Emily moved in with me full-time, the house felt different immediately. Lighter, quieter, like everyone could finally breathe without bracing for impact. There were no slammed doors, no sudden eruptions, no venom-laced comments cutting through ordinary conversations. For the first time in years, peace didn't feel temporary. For Sarah, that peace was an unforgivable betrayal. She didn't speak to her siblings after that. Not a text, not a call. When Michael tried to talk to her, she either ignored him or turned the conversation into another indictment of me. According to her, I had stolen her family. I had brainwashed Ryan and Emily. I had orchestrated everything. The truth that her own behavior had driven everyone away was something she refused to touch. We went ahead with the wedding plans quietly. No announcements online. No invitations extended to people who didn't support us. Just close family, a few friends, and Ryan and Emily, who helped more than they probably realized. Emily went venue scouting with me, offering opinions like she'd been waiting years to be included in something joyful. Ryan handled logistics, made sure Michael stayed distracted when stress crept in. Sarah knew about the date. She also made it very clear she wouldn't be there. The morning of the wedding, I checked my phone once. Just once, half expecting some last-minute message. There was nothing. No apology, no accusation, just silence. Michael was quieter than usual, but determined. We're doing the right thing, he told me, more like he was convincing himself than me. I nodded. I had stopped expecting validation from Sarah a long time ago. The ceremony was simple, beautiful in a way that felt earned. When Michael took my hands, I felt grounded, like after years of emotional turbulence, we were finally choosing stillness. Sarah didn't show up. Michael flinched when the empty seat caught his eye, but he didn't let it ruin the day. Neither did I. We had waited long enough for permission we were never going to get. A few days later, Sarah texted me, "You ruined everything. I hope you're happy." That was it. No punctuation, no context, just accusation neatly packaged. I didn't reply. Ryan and Emily tried reaching out to her at first. They really did. They texted, they called. Every attempt was met with sarcasm or outright hostility accusations that they'd sold out their mother's memory, that they'd chosen me over blood. Eventually, they stopped. And just like that, Sarah disappeared from our lives, not physically, but emotionally. Michael struggled the most. He still tried, still left messages, still hoped time would soften her anger. But months passed without a word. I started to believe that maybe finally the storm had burned itself out. I was wrong. Because 6 months after the wedding, Sarah reached out to me. Not to reconcile, not to apologize, but to ask a question that stunned me so deeply I had to read it twice just to be sure. Are you paying for my wedding or not? I stared at my phone for a long time after reading Sarah's message. There it was. No greeting. No acknowledgement of the years of silence. No apology for the way she'd treated me, or for cutting herself off from her siblings, or for skipping her father's wedding like it was a protest she needed to win. Just a demand, cold, transactional, and stunningly entitled. Are you paying for my wedding or not? I showed the message to Michael. He sighed the way someone does when they already know the answer, but wish they didn't. He didn't tell me what to do. He never did with Sarah anymore, but I could see the conflict written all over his face, hope tangled with dread. I didn't respond right away. Text felt too easy, too detached. If this conversation was going to happen, it needed to be real. So I called her. She answered on the second ring, and from the first word, I knew this wasn't a reconciliation call. Her tone was sharp, impatient, like I was wasting her time. She launched straight into it. She was engaged. Her wedding was coming up. Her mother would have paid for everything if she were still alive. And since I'd paid for Ryan and Emily's weddings, it was only fair that I did the same for her. I let her talk. When she finally paused, I took a breath and said calmly, "No." The silence on the other end was immediate and explosive. She accused me of favoritism, of punishing her, of trying to rewrite the family narrative. She said I was supposed to be part of the family, that this was proof I never really cared. That part stung more than I expected. I told her the truth, that I paid for Ryan and Emily's weddings because they wanted me there, because we had a relationship, because they didn't spend a decade telling me I didn't belong. You've made it clear you don't want me in your life, I said. So why would I pay for your wedding? She lost it. She yelled. She insulted me. She compared me again to her mother, as if the comparison itself was punishment. And then when anger failed, she tried guilt. You're selfish. You're cruel. You'll never be half the woman my mom was. Years of restraint cracked. I said something I knew I shouldn't have. something that had been building for far too long. "If you want your wedding paid for," I said quietly, "ask your real mom." The line went dead. I stood there, phone in my hand, heart racing. I felt sick, relieved, ashamed, empowered, all at once. I told Michael what happened. He didn't yell, he didn't scold me. He just looked tired and scared. Scared of what this meant for his relationship with Sarah. Scared that this was a line that couldn't be uncrossed. And maybe it was. We didn't hear from her for months after that. I told myself I was done apologizing for boundaries, done letting her use grief as a weapon, done being the villain in a story she refused to see clearly. But Sarah wasn't done. Not even close. Stop! Type continue for part 6. Public villain, private peace. Part 6. Public villain, private peace. Silence settled in after that call, heavy, deliberate, almost staged. Weeks passed, then months. No messages, no angry voicemails, no indirect shots through family friends. At first I wondered if what I'd said had finally ended things for good. Not healed them, but ended them. And for a while, life was calm. Ryan and Emily thrived in that calm. They laughed more, slept better, stopped flinching at raised voices. We built routines that didn't revolve around managing someone else's rage. Michael smiled again. Really smiled, not the tight, guilty version he'd worn for years. I started to believe that peace, even imperfect peace, was allowed. Then Ryan came home one night with a look I recognized immediately. The look people get when they've heard something ugly about you and don't know how to say it without hurting you. He told us he'd run into Sarah by accident. She'd been with friends, mutual acquaintances, people who knew just enough about our family to believe her version without questioning it. According to Sarah, I hadn't just refused to pay for her wedding. I'd laughed. I'd told her she didn't deserve one. I'd said she was nothing without her siblings backing her up. None of it was true, but she told it well. She cried, played the abandoned daughter, painted me as the cold stepmother who stole her father, turned her siblings against her, and then punished her for not falling in line. Ryan was furious, not at me, but at the manipulation. He defended me, corrected the story. But the damage was already done. Sarah had found a new battlefield. Public sympathy. A few days later, my phone rang from an unfamiliar number. It was Sarah. The moment I answered, she went straight for the throat. "You really think you can say whatever you want and get away with it?" she snapped. She accused me of poisoning her siblings against her, of destroying her relationship with her father, of making myself the victim while she suffered. According to her, everything wrong in her life traced back to me. I barely spoke. Not because I had nothing to say, but because I finally understood something crucial. She didn't want resolution. She wanted an enemy. When she paused to breathe, I told her the truth, softly, without defense, that I never tried to replace her mother, that I never wanted to take anything from her, that all I'd ever wanted was peace. She laughed. "You've never been part of this family," she said. "You're just some woman my dad married." That one landed deep, but instead of breaking, something in me finally settled. "Okay," I said. "If that's how you feel, I accept it." She hung up. That night, Michael and I sat in silence for a long time. He looked devastated, but not surprised. He said she was angry, needed someone to blame, and maybe that was true. But I was done being that person. I decided then that I would no longer chase a relationship that only existed when someone wanted something from me. I chose peace. And that's when Sarah showed up at our door. It was a Saturday afternoon, one of those quiet, unremarkable days that lull you into thinking nothing dramatic could possibly happen. Ryan was out with friends. Emily was in her room, music playing softly through the door. Michael and I were sitting on the couch, half watching a movie. Neither of us was really paying attention to when the doorbell rang. I remember the sound clearly because something in my chest tightened the second it echoed through the house. Michael stood up confused. We weren't expecting anyone. When he opened the door, I heard voices low, tense, and then his footsteps retreating back into the living room. "Christina," he said carefully, "Sarah's here." For a split second, a foolish part of me wondered if this was it, if time had finally done what patience couldn't. I stood up, smoothing my hands over my jeans, bracing myself. The moment I saw her, I knew better. Sarah wasn't there to reconcile. She wasn't there to talk. Her posture was rigid, her eyes sharp, with the kind of anger that doesn't want understanding. It wants victory. "I'm here to get what's mine," she said. No hello, no hesitation. I asked her what she meant, even though I already knew. She folded her arms and repeated the same argument she'd been clinging to for months, that I paid for Ryan and Emily, that it wasn't fair that I owed her. Standing there looking at her, I felt something unexpected. Not anger. Clarity. I told her calmly exactly what I'd said before, that I paid for Ryan and Emily because they wanted me in their lives, because we had a relationship, because love isn't something you can demand after years of rejection. She stepped closer, eyes blazing. You don't get to decide whose family. You're right, I said. You decided that a long time ago. She laughed bitter sharp, accused me of ruining everything, of stealing her father, of playing the victim. And for the first time, I didn't defend myself. Michael stepped in then, quiet, firm. He told her she couldn't come into our home and make demands like this, that she needed to leave. Sarah looked at him like he'd betrayed her all over again. Then she turned, walked out the door, and disappeared down the driveway without another word. After she left the house, felt unbearably still. Michael sat down heavily, rubbing his face. I don't know what to do anymore, he said. Neither did I. But I knew what I wouldn't do. I wouldn't beg. I wouldn't chase. I wouldn't keep shrinking myself to fit into someone else's anger. Sarah never contacted us again after that. Not to apologize, not to argue, not to ask. And as painful as that was for Michael, as heartbreaking as it was to accept something else happened too, our lives stabilized. Ryan and Emily flourished. Michael and I built a marriage that wasn't defined by fear, and I learned something I wish I'd understood years earlier. You can love someone deeply and still choose to stop letting them hurt you. Peace has a price. Sometimes that price is letting go of the idea that everyone will understand your side. And I paid it willingly.